My name is Sarah, and I am 32 years old. I bought my dream house after years of saving every penny from my software engineering job. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and finally a place to call my own. My sister Elaine just had her second baby and was struggling in her small apartment. I never expected that Tuesday dinner invitation would end with my family ambushing me with a lawyer who had papers demanding I trade homes with my sister. The worst part, my dad had already signed them. If you are going through family drama too, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to hear how this nightmare unfolded. The journey to home ownership was not an easy one for me. After graduating with my computer science degree, I spent 6 years aggressively saving while most of my friends were enjoying weekend trips and fancy dinners. Every bonus went straight into my house fund. Every promotion meant I could put away more money each month. I worked overtime, took on freelance projects, and lived with roommates far longer than I wanted to. But it was all worth it when I finally got the keys to my house 2 years ago. My home is not a mansion by any means, but it is perfect for me. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a backyard where I planted a garden. The master bedroom has large windows that let in beautiful morning light. I converted 1 bedroom into a home office where I work remotely 3 days a week. The 3rd bedroom became my crafting space where I make pottery and paint. I renovated the kitchen myself, installing butcher block, countertops, and a farmhouse sink I had dreamed about for years. Every corner of this house represents my hard work and my identity. Before all this happened, I had a good relationship with my sister Elaine. She is 2 years younger than me, and we were always close growing up. When she married Kevin 5 years ago, I was her maid of honor. I helped them move into their 2-bedroom apartment, which seemed perfect for a young couple starting out. When they had their first child, Mason, 3 years ago, I was overjoyed to become an aunt. I bought them a crib, helped paint the nursery, and babysat whenever they needed a night out. When Emma was born 6 months ago, I was equally excited to have a niece. I visited them in the hospital with gifts and took 2 weeks off work to help Elaine adjust to having 2 children. I could see their apartment was getting cramped. Mason was sleeping in a converted closet they had turned into a tiny bedroom, and Emma's crib was in their bedroom. The living room was overtaken by toys, a changing table, and baby supplies. I genuinely felt for their situation. Elaine had to quit her job as a kindergarten teacher because daycare for 2 children would have cost more than her salary. Kevin works as an accountant at a small firm with modest pay. They struggled to make ends meet on 1 income. Housing prices in our area have skyrocketed in recent years, making it difficult for young families to find affordable homes. I had considered ways I might help them. Maybe I could co-sign a loan for a larger apartment or help with a down payment on a small house in a more affordable neighborhood. I even thought about inviting them to stay with me temporarily while they saved up. That is what family does, right? We help each other through difficult times. I love my niece and nephew more than anything. Mason is a bright, curious little boy who loves dinosaurs and building blocks. Emma has the sweetest smile and had just started to recognize me when I visited. If only they had asked for help in a reasonable way, things might have turned out so differently. Instead, what happened next destroyed the trust I had in my family and forced me to reevaluate every relationship in my life. Last Tuesday, I received a text from my mother asking me to come over for dinner. This was not unusual, as we often had family dinners at my parents' house. She mentioned that Elaine and Kevin would be there, which I thought was nice since we could all catch up. I brought a bottle of wine and toys for the kids, looking forward to a pleasant evening with my family. When I arrived, something felt off immediately. The energy in the house was tense. My mother hugged me a bit too tightly, her eyes red as if she had been crying. My father barely made eye contact when he greeted me. Elaine was bouncing Emma on her hip while Mason played quietly in the corner, unusual for the energetic 3-year-old. Kevin stood awkwardly by the fireplace, staring at his phone. And then I noticed him, a man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit, sitting at my parents' dining table with a briefcase open in front of him. He was completely out of place in our casual family gathering, and the sight of him made my stomach drop. "Sarah, this is Harold Thompson," my father finally said, gesturing to the stranger. "He is a family attorney who is going to help us resolve a situation." I felt like I had walked into the wrong house. What situation needed resolving with a lawyer present? Harold stood up and extended his hand, which I shook automatically while my mind raced through possibilities. Was someone getting divorced? Had there been an accident I did not know about? Was someone in legal trouble? Please have a seat, Harold said, gesturing to the dining table where papers were spread out. Your family has asked me to mediate a discussion about a property exchange that would benefit everyone involved. Property exchange? I looked around at my family members, who all avoided my gaze except for Elaine, who stepped forward with Emma still on her hip. Sarah, we need to talk about our living situations, she said, her voice unnaturally rehearsed as if she had practiced this speech. As you know, our apartment is too small for a family of 4. The kids have no space to play. We have no privacy, and the neighborhood schools are terrible. I nodded slowly, still confused about why this conversation required a lawyer. I know it is tough. I have been thinking about ways I could help you guys find a bigger place. That is just it, Kevin interjected, stepping beside my sister. We have found a bigger place, your house. The room went silent as I tried to process what I had just heard. My house. Were they asking to move in with me temporarily? Harold cleared his throat. What your brother-in-law means is that your family has proposed a mutually beneficial solution. You would move into their apartment and they would take over your house. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. A single person does not need 3 bedrooms, while a growing family desperately needs the space. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. They wanted me to give up my house, the home I had worked years to afford, the place I had renovated and made my own. This is a joke, right? I looked around at my family, waiting for someone to break the tension with laughter. No one did. My mother finally spoke, her voice quivering. Honey, we know it seems unusual, but Elaine has 2 children who need space to grow. You are all alone in that big house. It just makes sense for you to downsize to something more appropriate for your lifestyle. My lifestyle, I repeated, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. You mean the life I have built for myself? The house I saved for years to buy? Childless adults should sacrifice for those with kids, my father said flatly, as if reciting a line from a script. That is how family works. Those with less responsibility step up for those with more. I felt my cheeks burning with anger and disbelief. So, because I do not have children, my home, my property, my life choices mean less. Harold interjected again, his tone condescendingly patient. No one is saying your choices mean less. This is about what is best for the family unit as a whole. Studies show that children raised in homes with adequate space have better outcomes in education and emotional development. Elaine began to cry, which seemed to be my family's cue to pile on the guilt. You have no idea how hard it is, she sobbed. Mason has nowhere to play. Emma will never have her own room. The apartment is on a busy street with no yard. Is that what you want for your niece and nephew, to grow up without a proper home when their aunt has plenty of space she does not even use? Kevin nodded vigorously. Your house has that fenced backyard. It is in a good school district. It has room for the kids to have their own bedrooms. Meanwhile, you use one bedroom for sleeping and the others for, what? Hobbies. How is that fair? I looked to my parents for support, but found none. My mother avoided my eyes, while my father sat stone-faced beside the lawyer. We have already discussed the financial aspects, Harold continued, pushing a document toward me. Since your house is worth more than their apartment, they would take over your mortgage payments. You would have no housing costs in the apartment since they own it outright. Really, you would be saving money in this arrangement. I could not believe what I was hearing. They had planned this ambush down to the financial details without ever considering how I might feel about giving up my home. This is insane, I said, standing up from the table. I am not trading homes with Elaine and Kevin. That house is mine. I worked for it. I paid for it. I love it. We figured you would be difficult about this, my father sighed, as if my refusal to hand over my biggest asset was simply me being stubborn. That is why we brought Harold. He can explain the legal framework for family property redistribution. Legal framework. There was no way this was legal. No one could force me to give up my house just because my sister had children. There is no legal framework that allows you to take my house, I said firmly. Harold smiled thinly. Actually, there are precedents for family property disputes being resolved in favor of those with dependent children. Courts often consider the best interests of minors in housing cases. Additionally, your parents have contributed to your education and early career, which could be considered family investment in your current assets. I could not believe what I was hearing. This man was threatening me with legal action if I did not give my house to my sister, and my family was sitting there nodding along as if this was a reasonable request. I paid back every cent my parents loaned me for college, I said, my voice shaking with anger. And even if I had not, that does not give them the right to demand my house in return. My mother wiped away tears. A woman without children will never understand the sacrifices parents make. We gave you everything, Sarah. We supported your education, your career choices. Now Elaine needs support for her family. Why are you being so selfish? Throughout my life, I had never been the selfish child. I was the responsible one who made good grades, who did not cause trouble, who built a stable career. Now, suddenly, because I wanted to keep my own property, I was selfish. You have always been like this, my father added, his disappointment evident. Always thinking about yourself, never considering others. Your sister gave us grandchildren. What have you contributed to this family lately? I stood there stunned by his words. My contributions to the family did not count because I had not produced children. The holidays I hosted, the financial help I had given my parents when Dad was between jobs, the countless hours I spent helping with Mason and Emma, none of that mattered. Harold took advantage of my momentary silence. I have prepared a property transfer agreement. We just need your signature and we can begin the process. Your family is hoping to complete the move before the school year starts, so Mason can enroll in the elementary school near your house. This is ridiculous, I said, finding my voice again. I am not signing anything. I need time to think about this. What is there to think about? Elaine snapped, her earlier tears suddenly gone. This is about my children's future. Every day you delay is another day they suffer in that cramped apartment. We have already told the neighbors we are moving, Kevin added casually. Mrs. Patterson next door to you is excited to have children in the neighborhood again. I felt like I had entered some bizarre alternate reality. You told my neighbors you are moving into my house before even asking me? Elaine shrugged. We knew you would agree once you understood how important this is for the kids. You always do the right thing, Sarah. The right thing? According to whom? According to a family that saw me as nothing more than a resource to be used. I looked around the room at these people who I thought loved me, who I thought respected me, and saw only entitlement and expectation. I need some air, I said, walking toward the front door. This is too much to process right now. We need an answer tonight, my father called after me. The lawyer has other appointments this week. I turned back, incredulous. You expect me to decide whether to give up my house on the spot with no time to consider or consult my own lawyer? Why would you need a lawyer? My mother asked, genuinely confused. This is a family matter. A family matter with legal documents and threats about court precedents, I shot back. I am leaving now. Do not expect an answer tonight. As I reached for the door handle, Harold spoke again. Before you go, you should know that your father has already signed the agreement as a witness. He believes this is in the best interest of the family. I froze, then slowly turned back to look at my father. He would not meet my eyes. You signed papers about my house without my knowledge. My voice was barely above a whisper. It is just as a witness, he mumbled, to show family support for the arrangement. I walked out without another word, got in my car, and drove home in a daze. My own father had signed documents regarding my property without even telling me. The betrayal was so profound I could barely comprehend it. That night I could not sleep. I paced through my house, the home I had worked so hard for, looking at all the personal touches that made it mine, the built-in bookshelves I had installed myself, the garden I had planted from seeds, the kitchen I had renovated with my own hands. How could they ask me to give this up? I tried to understand their perspective. Yes, Elaine and Kevin needed more space for their growing family. Yes, on paper it might seem wasteful for me to have 3 bedrooms while they crammed 4 people into 2. But this was my home, my sanctuary, the result of my hard work and sacrifices. Around midnight, I received an email from Harold Thompson. The subject line read, "Property transfer agreement signature required within 48 hours." Attached was the document my father had already signed, with a highlighted section waiting for my signature. I read through it in horror. The language was designed to make me feel guilty for hesitating. It mentioned the best interests of minor children and family obligation to support dependents multiple times. It detailed how I would benefit financially from not having mortgage payments in the apartment. It even included a section about how I could visit the house, not my house, on weekends, to maintain my garden if I wished. The audacity was breathtaking. They had planned every detail of taking my home from me, down to when I would be allowed to visit my own garden. I closed the email without responding and tried again to sleep, but my phone kept buzzing with text messages. From Elaine. Just sign the papers, Sarah. You know this is the right thing to do. From Mom. We are disappointed in your reaction tonight. We raised you better than this. From Kevin. We are thinking of putting Mason in the bedroom with the morning light. He is an early riser anyway. They were already planning the layout of my house. My house. The violation was overwhelming. The next morning, things escalated further. I woke up to find Elaine and Kevin parked in my driveway. When I reluctantly opened the door, they walked in with measuring tapes and notebooks. What are you doing? I asked, still in my pajamas. Just taking some measurements, Kevin said casually, as if this were perfectly normal. We need to know if our couch will fit in the living room or if we should buy a new one. You cannot just come into my house and start measuring things, I said, my voice rising. I have not agreed to anything. Elaine looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. Sarah, stop being difficult. This is happening. The sooner you accept it, the easier the transition will be for everyone. This is not happening, I said firmly. This is my house. I am not trading with you. The lawyer says we have a strong case if you force this to court, Kevin said, continuing to measure my living room wall as if I had not spoken. Your dad told us how much he helped you with the down payment. He gave me $5,000 as a gift, which I tried to pay back, and he refused, I said. That does not give him or you any claim to my house. Family resources are family resources, Elaine said dismissively. The point is, you are single with no responsibilities. We have 2 children. Society recognizes that families with children have greater needs. I stood there in shock as they continued to walk through my house, opening closets, discussing which furniture they would keep and which they would replace. The entitlement was staggering. After they finally left, promising to return with paint samples, I received a call from Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor. I just wanted to say how wonderful it is what you are doing for your sister, she said warmly. Giving up your home so those beautiful children can have a better life. Not many people would make such a sacrifice. My heart sank. Mrs. Patterson, I have not agreed to give my house to my sister. There was an awkward pause. Oh, well, that is not what she told me when she brought the children by yesterday. She introduced Mason to my grandson and said they would be neighbors soon. She even showed him where his new bedroom would be. Elaine had brought Mason to my house when I was not home. Had she used a spare key? The invasion of privacy was infuriating. Throughout the day, the pressure mounted. Relatives I rarely spoke to called to either praise my generosity or scold me for still hesitating. It became clear that my family had spread the word that I had agreed to the house swap, or at least that I should agree to it. By evening, I was emotionally exhausted. Then came the final straw. A moving truck pulled up in front of my house, and Kevin and Elaine got out, followed by 2 movers. What is this? I demanded, meeting them in the driveway. We figured we would get a head start, Kevin said. Just bringing over some of the kids' things. The apartment is so cramped we can barely pack with everything still in there. You are not moving anything into my house, I said firmly. I have not agreed to this swap, and I am not going to. Elaine's face hardened. Why are you being so selfish? These are your niece and nephew we are talking about. Do you want them to grow up in a cramped, unsafe environment when you have all this space you do not even use? My house is not yours to take, I said, my voice breaking. I worked for this. I saved for this. This is my home. It is just a house, Elaine snapped. Family is more important than property. If family is so important, why are you trying to take my home from me? I asked. Why are you spreading rumors to the neighbors, bringing in lawyers, and showing up with moving trucks without my consent? Because you are being unreasonable, Elaine shouted, causing Emma to start crying in her car seat. A reasonable person would have immediately agreed to help their family. I stood my ground. The movers need to leave. You need to leave. We are done discussing this. Kevin stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. The lawyer says we have options if you continue to be difficult. Your dad is on our side. Most of the family is on our side. Do you really want to fight all of us over a house? In that moment, I realized just how far they were willing to go. This was not a misunderstanding or a poorly communicated request for help. This was a coordinated effort to pressure, manipulate, and intimidate me into giving up my home. I went back inside and locked the door, then watched through the window as they argued in my driveway before finally leaving with the moving truck. I collapsed on my couch and sobbed. The family I thought I had, the people I thought loved me, were willing to bully and threaten me to get what they wanted. That night was the lowest point. I felt completely alone. I questioned whether I was being selfish. Was there something wrong with me for wanting to keep my own home? Was I a bad aunt for not prioritizing my niece and nephew's needs above my own? The doubt and guilt were overwhelming. I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling betrayed by the people I trusted most in the world. The next morning, I woke up to more texts and missed calls. My mother had left a voicemail saying she was heartbroken by my continued selfishness. My father had texted that he was deeply disappointed in me. Elaine had sent photos of Mason and Emma with sad faces, with the caption, "Missing their future bedrooms." The emotional manipulation was relentless. Every message was designed to make me feel guilty, selfish, and wrong for not giving up my home. I was about to turn off my phone when I received another email from Harold Thompson. This one had a more serious tone. As your father has already signed the preliminary agreement, we are prepared to move forward with legal proceedings if necessary. I should inform you that in family property disputes, courts often favor the interests of minor children. Additionally, your parents have provided documentation of financial assistance throughout your adult life, which could be construed as investment in the property in question. I strongly advise you to sign the agreement voluntarily to avoid costly and emotionally difficult litigation. Attached to the email was a scan of the document my father had signed. Seeing his signature on papers regarding my house without my consent felt like a physical blow. This was not just Elaine and Kevin being entitled. My own parents were actively working against me. As I stared at the document, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Kevin standing there with what looked like more paperwork. I did not open the door. "Sarah, I know you are in there," he called out. "We need to talk about the timeline for the move. The landlord needs to know when we are vacating the apartment." I remained silent, leaning against the door with my heart pounding. "This is happening whether you cooperate or not," he continued. "Your dad has already talked to a judge he knows from his Rotary Club. We have options if you keep being difficult." I slid down to the floor, my back against the door, and tried to control my breathing. They were not going to stop. The pressure would continue until I gave in or broke down completely. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Your sister is crying again because of you. How can you do this to your own family?" Another from my father. "I raised you to put family first. I do not recognize the selfish woman you have become." Then came the worst blow. A mutual friend forwarded me a social media post from Elaine that read, "Heartbroken that someone who claims to love my children would deny them a safe and spacious home while living alone in a house with empty bedrooms. Some people only think of themselves, I guess. Hashtag family first." She had taken this public, painting me as the villain in a story where she was the victim. The comments were filled with people expressing sympathy for her and disgust toward me, though she had never mentioned me by name. I felt like I was drowning. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were gaslighting me, manipulating me, and publicly shaming me, all because I did not want to give up my home. Later that afternoon, I received a group text from extended family members, all weighing in on a situation they knew nothing about. Cousins I had not spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about where I should live. Aunts and uncles questioned my character and values. Even my grandmother sent a message saying she was disappointed in my unwillingness to help family. The isolation was complete. It seemed like everyone was against me, all believing Elaine's version of events where I was the selfish, childless woman denying innocent children a proper home. That evening, I hit rock bottom when I discovered something that shattered what little trust I had left. Checking my mail, I found a letter from my homeowners association welcoming the Kevin and Elaine Anderson family to the neighborhood. They had actually gone to my HOA and updated the resident information without my knowledge or consent. The violation was so complete, so brazen, that something inside me finally snapped. This was no longer about family dynamics or misunderstandings. This was harassment. This was an organized campaign to bully me out of my own home. I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by threatening emails, manipulative texts, and the HOA letter, and I sobbed until I had no tears left. In that moment of complete despair, I realized something important. I did not deserve this. No one deserved to be treated this way, especially not by family. With that realization came clarity. I was not going to give in to their demands, no matter how much pressure they applied. This was my home, my life, and I had the right to defend it. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to fight back. The next morning, instead of responding to the barrage of messages from my family, I searched online for family property disputes and harassment from relatives. After reading several articles and forum posts from people in similar situations, I realized I needed professional help. I made an appointment with Caroline Walker, a lawyer specializing in property law and family disputes. Her earliest availability was 2 days later, which meant 2 more days of enduring pressure from my family. But having a plan in place gave me strength to hold on. During those 2 days, the harassment continued. Elaine and Kevin drove by my house multiple times. My parents called hourly, alternating between guilt trips and anger. Harold Thompson sent daily emails with increasingly threatening legal language. I stopped answering my door and set my phone to silent, preserving my sanity while I waited for my appointment. When I finally sat across from Caroline in her office, the whole story poured out of me. I showed her the emails from Harold, the document my father had signed, the HOA letter, and screenshots of the text messages and social media posts. Caroline listened carefully, taking notes and occasionally asking for clarification. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair with a serious expression. "First, let me assure you that what they are trying to do has no legal basis," she said firmly. "Your house is your property. Your name is on the deed and mortgage. No one can force you to trade or give up your house, regardless of their family status or your father's signature on some fabricated document." The relief I felt was overwhelming. Despite knowing intellectually that they could not legally take my house, hearing it from a professional lifted an enormous weight. "What Harold Thompson is doing borders on legal malpractice," Caroline continued, reviewing his emails. "He is using intimidation tactics and misrepresenting the law to pressure you. The document your father signed has no legal standing whatsoever. He cannot sign away your property rights. Period." "What about their claims about courts favoring families with children?" I asked. Caroline shook her head. "That is a gross misrepresentation. While courts consider the best interests of children in custody and divorce proceedings, they do not simply reassign private property from single people to families with children. Property rights are fundamental in our legal system." She began typing on her computer. "I am going to send a cease and desist letter to Harold Thompson and copy your family members. This will formally document the harassment and make it clear that any further attempts to pressure you will have legal consequences." "Will that stop them?" I asked, not entirely convinced that a letter would deter people who had already gone to such extremes. "It puts them on notice that you have legal representation and that their actions could have consequences. For a lawyer like Harold, the threat of being reported to the Bar Association should be enough to make him back off. As for your family—" She paused, her expression softening. "The legal letter may not address the emotional aspects of this situation." She was right. The legal issues might be straightforward, but the betrayal by my family cut deep. "I recommend documenting everything," Caroline continued. "Save all emails, text messages, and social media posts. Record conversations, if legal in your state. Install security cameras at your home. Change your locks immediately if they have keys." The idea that I needed security cameras to protect myself from my own family was heartbreaking, but I knew she was right. "Also, consider seeking emotional support," she added gently. "Family pressure like this can be traumatic. A therapist or support group might help you process these events and establish healthy boundaries going forward." I left Caroline's office with a plan of action and her promise to send the cease and desist letter that day. On my way home, I stopped at a home improvement store and bought new locks and a security camera system. I spent the afternoon changing every lock and installing cameras at my front and back doors. Next, I called my closest friends, people who were not connected to my family, and explained the situation. Their outrage and support reminded me that what my family was doing was not normal or acceptable. My friend Rachel offered to stay with me for a few days, which I gratefully accepted. Having another person in the house made me feel safer and less isolated. I also reached out to my boss and explained that I was dealing with a difficult family situation that might require time off for legal appointments. Her supportive response was another reminder that there were people in my life who respected my boundaries and cared about my well-being. That evening, Caroline sent me a copy of the cease and desist letter she had sent to Harold Thompson with copies to my parents Elaine and Kevin. The letter outlined the harassment I had experienced, clarified that their legal claims had no merit, and warned that continued harassment could result in legal action. The response was immediate. Harold Thompson sent a brief email stating that he was withdrawing from the matter. My father called, leaving an angry voicemail about how I had escalated a family matter by involving lawyers. Elaine sent a series of texts calling me vindictive and heartless for threatening legal action against my own family. Their reactions confirmed what I had begun to suspect. They never had a legal case to begin with. Harold's quick withdrawal suggested he knew his tactics would not hold up to scrutiny from another lawyer. My family's anger revealed that they had been counting on emotional manipulation, not legal standing, to get what they wanted. The next day, I took another step toward protecting myself. I joined an online support group for people dealing with family estrangement and boundary violations. Reading stories from others who had experienced similar pressure and manipulation helped me understand that I was not alone, and that standing firm on my boundaries was not selfish but necessary for my well-being. With Rachel's support, I began to work through the complex emotions the situation had triggered. Guilt over not giving my house to my sister, anger at my family's entitlement and manipulation, grief for the relationships I had thought were loving and supportive, fear about what would happen to those relationships if I continued to stand my ground. A week after sending the cease and desist letter, Caroline suggested we request a formal meeting with my family and Harold Thompson if he was still involved. Sometimes having these discussions in a structured environment with legal representation present can prevent emotional escalation, she explained. I agreed, though the thought of facing my family after everything that had happened made my stomach churn. Caroline sent the invitation for a meeting at her office the following week. To my surprise, they accepted. In the days leading up to the meeting, the direct harassment subsided somewhat, though I still received occasional guilt-tripping texts from my mother and passive-aggressive social media posts from Elaine. The new locks and security cameras gave me peace of mind, especially after I discovered that someone had tried to use a key at my front door while I was at work. The camera footage was not clear enough to identify who it was, but the timing suggested it was likely Elaine or Kevin. The morning of the meeting, Rachel hugged me and reminded me that I had done nothing wrong and had nothing to be ashamed of. "Your house is yours," she said firmly. "No one has the right to take it from you, family or not." With those words bolstering my courage, I walked into Caroline's office, ready to face my family and reclaim my power. The conference room in Caroline's office felt too small for the tension it contained. My parents sat stiffly on one side of the table, Elaine and Kevin beside them. Harold Thompson was noticeably absent, replaced by another lawyer I did not recognize. Caroline sat beside me, her presence reassuring. "Thank you all for coming," Caroline began, her tone professional but warm. "We are here to discuss the ongoing situation regarding Sarah's house and to hopefully find a resolution that respects everyone's rights and boundaries." My father started to interrupt, but Caroline held up a hand. "Before anyone speaks, I want to establish some ground rules. Each person will have a chance to share their perspective without interruption. We will focus on finding a solution, not assigning blame. And most importantly, we will acknowledge that Sarah is the legal owner of her house with full rights to decide what happens to that property." The last point caused visible discomfort among my family members. Their lawyer, who introduced himself as Michael Reed, nodded in agreement with Caroline's ground rules. "From a legal standpoint," Michael said, addressing my family more than me, "I have reviewed the situation and must advise that there is no legal mechanism to compel Sarah to exchange properties. The document previously prepared by Mr. Thompson has no legal standing, and pursuing this matter in court would not be advisable." The admission seemed to deflate my father, whose face showed surprise and disappointment. Had Harold Thompson truly led them to believe they had a legal case against me? Caroline then gave me the floor. With a deep breath, I spoke directly to my family for the first time in weeks. "I love you all," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I love Mason and Emma. I want what is best for them, but what has happened over the past month has deeply hurt me. You have tried to pressure, manipulate, and intimidate me into giving up my home. You have spread rumors about me to neighbors and family. You have invaded my privacy and violated my boundaries. You have made me feel like my worth to this family is conditional on my willingness to sacrifice everything I have worked for." My mother started to speak, but Caroline gently reminded her of the ground rules. "The way you have treated me is not love," I continued. "It is not family supporting each other. It is bullying, and I will not tolerate it anymore. My house is my home. I worked hard for it. I love it. I am not giving it up. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, one by one, my family members spoke. My mother went first, tearfully explaining that she only wanted what was best for her grandchildren. "We did not mean to hurt you," she said, though the lack of a direct apology was telling. "We just thought since you live alone and Elaine has the children, that my home, my life choices, and my boundaries matter less," I finished for her. "That is exactly the problem, Mom. You see me as less deserving because I do not have children." My father spoke next, his tone defensive at first. "We never intended to actually take legal action," he claimed. "Harold said the document was just to show you how serious we were about helping Elaine and Kevin find a better living situation." "You signed papers regarding my house without my consent," I reminded him. "How would you feel if I did that to you?" He had no answer for that. Kevin spoke briefly, claiming they had been desperate and did not know what else to do. His apology seemed more genuine than my parents', though he still maintained that their need for space justified their actions. Finally, Elaine spoke. To my surprise, tears filled her eyes, but not the manipulative tears I had seen before. These seemed real. "I have been jealous of you for years," she admitted, her voice breaking. "You have the successful career, the beautiful house, the freedom. I love my children more than anything. But motherhood is harder than I ever imagined. When I saw your house with all that space, all I could think was how unfair it was that you had everything I wanted." Her honesty caught me off guard. This was the first glimpse of real emotion, of the real issue underlying the house demand. "So you decided to take it from me?" I asked quietly. "I convinced myself you owed it to me," she said, looking down at her hands, "that because my life was harder with children, you should give up what you had worked for. I see now how wrong that was." The conversation continued for over 2 hours. Gradually, the focus shifted from the house to the deeper issues in our family dynamics. How my parents had always favored Elaine because she followed the traditional path they valued. How Elaine's resentment of my career success had festered. How Kevin had felt inadequate for not being able to provide the home he thought his family deserved. By the end of the meeting, several things were clear. First, my family finally understood that the house was not up for discussion. I would not be trading or giving it up, period. Second, our relationships had been damaged in ways that would take time and effort to repair, if repair was even possible. And third, the issue had never really been about the house, but about respect, boundaries, and different visions of what family obligation meant. As we prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. "I should never have signed those papers," he said quietly. "I was wrong, and I am sorry." It was the first direct apology I had received, and while it did not erase the hurt, it was a start. Caroline and I watched as my family filed out of the conference room. "How are you feeling?" she asked once we were alone. "Drained," I admitted, "but stronger than before. Clear about my boundaries." "That is progress," she said with a smile. "Family dynamics do not change overnight, but you have taken an important step in establishing that you deserve respect." In the weeks that followed, I maintained limited contact with my family as I processed everything that had happened. I kept the security cameras installed and the new locks in place, not yet ready to fully trust that the boundary violations were over. To my surprise, Elaine reached out with a text that seemed genuinely remorseful. "I am truly sorry for what we tried to do. I let jealousy and entitlement blind me to how much I was hurting you. I do not expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I regret my actions." It was a small step, but a meaningful one. Meanwhile, I channeled my energy into helping Elaine and Kevin find a more suitable housing solution within their means. Not because I felt obligated, but because I chose to. I helped them create a realistic budget and savings plan. I researched first-time home buyer programs they might qualify for. I even offered to help with a reasonable down payment when they were ready, as a gift with no strings attached. The experience had changed me. I was more assertive about my boundaries, more cautious about who I trusted, and more aware of the complex dynamics that can lurk beneath family relationships. But I was also stronger, more confident in my right to protect what was mine, and more committed to building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. 3 months after the lawyer meeting, Elaine and Kevin found a small, 3-bedroom house in an up-and-coming neighborhood. It needed work, but the price was within their budget, especially with the first-time homebuyer credit they qualified for. I helped them with painting and repairs, not out of obligation, but as a freely given gift between equals. The first time I visited them in their new home, seeing Mason and Emma playing in their own backyard, I felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from the entire ordeal. This was how it should have been all along. Not them taking what was mine, but finding their own path with appropriate support. My relationship with my parents remained strained, but slowly improved as they began to recognize and respect my boundaries. My father's apology had been followed by actions that showed he was genuinely remorseful, while my mother took longer to understand how deeply her words and actions had hurt me. As for my house, it remained my sanctuary, my achievement, my home. No guilt, no matter how skillfully applied, could change the fact that I had the right to keep what I had worked for, regardless of my family status or life choices. 6 months have passed since that awful Tuesday when my family ambushed me with a lawyer and demands for my house. The journey to healing has been neither quick nor easy, but I am in a much better place now, both emotionally and in my relationships. The first few weeks after the confrontation meeting were the hardest. I alternated between anger, grief, and lingering doubt about whether I had done the right thing. Even though I knew legally and ethically I was justified in keeping my home, years of family conditioning made it difficult to shake the guilt completely. Therapy became my lifeline during this time. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped me understand that the guilt I felt was not a sign that I had done something wrong, but rather the result of family patterns that had taught me my needs and boundaries were less important than others. She introduced me to the concept of family roles and helped me see how I had been cast as the responsible one, the giver, the one who sacrifices for others without complaint. Breaking out of that role will feel uncomfortable, she told me. The discomfort does not mean you are wrong. It means you are growing. Growing was exactly what I was doing, painful as it sometimes was. I learned to say no without apology. I learned to recognize manipulation tactics like guilt trips and emotional blackmail. Most importantly, I learned that loving someone does not mean giving them whatever they demand, especially at great cost to yourself. Meanwhile, Elaine and Kevin settled into their new home. The small 3-bedroom house they found needed work, but was in a decent school district and had a fenced backyard for the children. They qualified for a first-time home buyer program that made the monthly payments manageable on Kevin's salary. I helped them with some renovations, teaching Elaine how to paint and install backsplash the way I had learned when fixing up my own house. Our relationship has changed fundamentally. The entitled demands are gone, replaced by genuine gratitude when I offer help and respect when I cannot. Elaine has admitted that her attempt to take my house came from a place of deep insecurity and jealousy, feelings she is now addressing in her own therapy. I compared myself to you constantly, she confessed during a sister's lunch last month. Your career, your freedom, your beautiful home. I felt like a failure in comparison, so I convinced myself you owed me what you had. I am so sorry for what I put you through. Her apology meant a great deal, especially because it came with changed behavior, not just words. My relationship with my parents has been slower to heal. My father came around first, his initial apology followed by consistent respect for my boundaries. He helped Elaine and Kevin with some repairs on their new house, showing through actions that he supported their independence rather than entitled demands. My mother has struggled more to understand my perspective. Her belief that family means sacrifice runs deep, and she still occasionally makes comments about my empty bedrooms or how I have it easy without children. But even she has begun to recognize that her expectations were unreasonable. A breakthrough came when she visited my house for the first time since the conflict. Seeing my pottery studio and the garden I had cultivated, she finally seemed to understand that my home was not just square footage, but an expression of my identity and passion. "You have made something beautiful here," she said quietly. "I can see why you fought so hard to keep it." It was not quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, and that was a start. The experience has also brought unexpected positive changes to my life. I have become involved with a support group for people navigating difficult family dynamics, first as a member seeking help, now as someone who can offer guidance to others. Sharing my story has helped others recognize manipulation and stand firm in their own boundaries. My circle of friends has grown stronger as well. Rachel, who stayed with me during the worst of the crisis, remains a dear friend. Other friends who supported me without judgment have become like chosen family, relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Professionally, I have found new confidence. Standing up to my family's demands taught me that I could advocate for myself in other areas too. I negotiated a promotion at work, something I might have been too conflict averse to pursue before. My boss later told me she had been waiting for me to step up and claim what I deserved. As for my house, it remains my sanctuary, but I view it differently now. It is not just my achievement, but a symbol of my self-worth and boundaries. Each room, each personal touch reminds me that I have the right to create a life that brings me joy, whether or not that life follows traditional expectations. Recently, I have been seeing someone new. David is kind, respectful, and understood immediately when I explained why I needed to take things slowly in terms of sharing my space. Having someone who respects my boundaries without question has been healing in ways I never expected. The most profound lesson from this experience has been about the true meaning of family. Real family does not demand sacrifice at the cost of your well-being. Real family does not use manipulation or guilt to get what they want. Real family respects boundaries, acknowledges mistakes, and grows together through conflict rather than demanding compliance. I still have the family I was born into, now with clearer boundaries and expectations. But I also have the family I have chosen, and the stronger sense of self that comes from standing firm in my truth. If you are facing similar pressure from family, whether about property or other boundaries, remember that you have the right to protect what is yours. Your needs matter. Your boundaries deserve respect. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and your family is to say no to unreasonable demands. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to protect their boundaries, even against family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true love never demands that you sacrifice your well-being or dignity.